First off, thanks everyone for attending tonight. This is great interest in the corridor study and really appreciate all your time here as we kind of kick things off here with this first public meeting. My name is John Wiggin. I'm the consultant project manager of HDR. We have about a 25-minute or so introductory presentation for tonight's public meeting as well as the entire corridor study. After that, we will be breaking straight into an open house for the remainder of tonight's public meeting. So first off, a couple housekeeping items. If you did not sign in, I encourage you to please sign in before you leave tonight. Also, if you leave your contact information, make sure we'll add it to the list so you'll be notified of upcoming public meetings and updates to the study website. Also, at the informational desk, we have a number of things for you, including a comment card. If you grab one of these, you can leave your comments here tonight at the meeting. We also have a commuter survey, and if you're one that travels along US 16 corridor frequently, we have a couple of quick high-level questions that we'd like your feedback on. And then we also have an informational sheet, and that has all the information on tonight's meeting, also as well as the corridor study as a whole, has the contact information, study website, and schedule. With that, we do have a study website, us16corridor.com, and we'll be posting updates here throughout the entire, throughout the study, as well as everything you see here at tonight's public meeting, including the boards, tonight's presentation, informational handout, comment card, will all be posted to the website here hopefully by the end of the week. We're also recording the presentation, so if you know someone that missed it, would like to view the presentation, that hopefully we'll get that link up there as well here within about a week. So like I mentioned before, tonight's public information meeting, again, we have an introductory presentation. We'll be breaking right out to an open house. This is a very diverse corridor, 16.5 miles, US 16. A lot of things going on throughout this corridor. So we'll just break out the open house for one-on-one discussions. We have a lot of members from the study advisory team here to answer your questions and provide information for those areas that you might be interested in. And one other thing I want to touch on, that we have a variety of ways to provide comments and feedback here throughout the study. So we have the comment cards. Those will be available at all the meetings. You can leave that in the comment box before you leave tonight. You can also mail those back. We have a return address on the back. You can also send contact or send information, comments, and questions to the study website. Those will come directly to me. You can also send either the study contacts questions, comments. You'll contact us by email, phone, mail, whatever is most convenient for you. So with that, we're going to get going here in the public meeting, the presentation, and the purpose of tonight's meeting is really threefold. The first one is to introduce the study. So about the first half of the presentation here tonight, we'll be introducing the study and the purpose for tonight's meeting. Then we'll get into the gathering feedback, US 16 corridor transportation needs. I have a few informational slides on what I mean by transportation needs, as well as some of the analysis that we've conducted to date. So hopefully that will spur some comments here later throughout the tonight's open house. And then finally, we do have, for a couple of intersections, I'd like to solicit your input on draft purpose and needs statements. So the study team, two primary site contacts, again myself, John Weir, HDR, project manager, also Steve Graham with the South Dakota Department of Transportation. You can certainly reach out to either of us throughout the entire study, and we'll make sure and get your comments addressed or questions answered. At the onset of the study, the DOT organized a study advisory team, which is a group of representatives from the agencies you see up here, including throughout the DOT, Federal Highway Administration, City of Rapid City, Pennington County, Rapid City Area MPO. Essentially, the purpose of the study advisory team is to help guide the study through completion. That we meet regularly, once every month, every other month, and just really kind of those checks and guidance here throughout the entire study. South Dakota Department of Transportation contracted with the consultant team of HDR and Ferber Engineering. And essentially, we're the ones responsible with developing all the materials, developing the concepts, conducting the evaluation here through going through the study. So the study area we're looking at really focused on US 16, about 16.5 miles, extending from just north of the Keystone Y up to the Cathedral Drive Fairmont Boulevard intersection. We're also looking at a number of crossroads and adjacent roadways, and that gets into the Catron Boulevard US 16 bypass segments between Les Hollers Way and Eastern Wellington Drive intersection. Also looking at Neck Yoke Road extending southward from US 16 to the Spring Creek area. Also looking at US 16 service roads throughout the entire study area, as well as US 16 ramps within the Rockerville area. So study goals, the main goal that we're, with this overall corridor study is to develop a long-range plan for US 16 here within the study area. And what that means is we're looking out the next 30, 35 years and developing that plan to address the traffic growth, the safety issues, access, as this corridor begins to evolve over the next 30 years, that our plan, hopefully will address those items here into the future. So with that, there are two key primary focus intersections. That's US 16, 16B, Catron Boulevard intersection, as well as US 16 Neck Yoke Road intersection. And those are the two intersections that are really the primary drivers for the study. That being said, that I'm sure a lot of you have been in public meetings for that US 16, 16B Catron Boulevard intersection in particular, that there was a previous study that wrapped up in that 2015-26 2016 timeframe, and that study looked at a whole host of alternatives at that intersection. It was really focused to the intersection, not so much the entire corridor. And in that study, that the recommended alternatives that were carried forward were a single point interchange and a displaced left turn intersection, also known as a continuous flow intersection. So with this study, essentially this study serves as an umbrella for all studies really conducted to date and brings those all together. So in this location in particular, we aren't taking steps back. These are the two alternatives. We're looking at that intersection. So we're moving forward with those alternatives. However, throughout the rest of the corridor, it's kind of more that blank slate. We're at the ground level as part of this corridor study. So just so you know, we're kind of at different phases in that project development process here throughout the corridor. Other areas we're looking at corridor lanes and access, and that gets into looking at the service roads, looking at the auxiliary lanes, whether it's acceleration, deceleration lanes, turn lanes at intersections. Again, looking at the ramps in the Rockerville area, as well as traffic control at all the intersections. Essentially, what is the appropriate traffic control at these intersections, in particular related to access and that intended function of the US 16 corridor. And then throughout the study, there's also an environmental documentation process. And that really tracks here, really throughout this entire study, where we're looking at potential environmental impacts and looking at the risks of various concepts as we go through that development and refinement process. So this slide shows study process and schedule. The study kicked off right around the 1st of April. We hope to wrap up in that December 2020 timeframe. So we're looking at about a year and a half, just over a year and a half for this entire corridor study. And the first thing I want to do is focus on the green bars up at the top, and those represent here the overall corridor study, schedule and process. And there's really 6 primary phases to this corridor study. And where we're at right now is in phase 1, and that's where we're gathering and analyzing information and identifying transportation issues and needs. And this is really, again, kind of right at that foundation. This is where we determine what needs to be analyzed and what needs to be addressed as part of this corridor study. This first public meeting that we're having tonight, as well as stakeholder meetings we had with individual businesses and property owners here throughout the day, essentially the culmination of this first phase. That this is where we're looking for your input, help us fill in the gaps, help us validate some of our conclusions we have in terms of transportation needs and what we're addressing as part of this corridor study. Following this first public meeting, we'll step into phase 2, and that's where we begin to develop concepts, go through some preliminary evaluation of those concepts, and then we'll come back to the second public meeting, kind of that November, December 2019 timeframe. So we'll have some things to show you at that point in terms of concepts that we developed to address the needs that we've discussed here tonight, the comments you gave to us. We'll be asking you for your feedback. We'll be looking to narrow those down to a much more manageable group of potential alternatives or feasible scenarios, and that gets us into phase 3. So when we do take that smaller group of alternatives, we can go through additional refinement, additional analysis, and we can begin to develop some recommendations on projects to carry out of this corridor study. So that's when we'll come back for our third and final public meeting. We'll have those preliminary recommendations, a more detailed analysis, refined alternatives, again to present to you and look for your feedback to help us developing those final recommendations. So really the final 3 phases of the corridor study, one of those is the environmental review process, again that tracks throughout the entire corridor study. And then the other 2 phases they're related to developing the final report, going through the reviews, going through the revisions, and then that final submittal in December 2020. So here to confuse things a little bit, there's a little bit of a tweak to the schedule, and that's in the orange bars, and that's related to the 2 focus intersections. At the onset of the study, the DOT determined that they'd like to accelerate the study of these intersections, partly because we've also, they're at a different level a different spot in that project development process than the other alternatives, but also they'd like to begin a design project and project scoping in that summer 2020 timeframe. So after the conclusion of this public meeting, looking at the US 16, 16B Catron Boulevard intersection, that single point, the displaced left turn intersection alternatives, as well as US 16 Neck York Road intersection, that we'll be transitioning into that that final refinement, that more detailed analysis. So when we come back at the second public meeting, we'll have our preliminary recommendations at those intersections. And then the goal would be that we'd be able to transition into the design, the project scoping, sometime that summer 2020 timeframe. So a couple things I do want to note here in terms of recent future study area projects. Here in the 2019-2022 timeframe within the US 16 corridor, there are a number of projects planned, also recently completed. One of those is a traffic signal at US 16B in Healing Way. That project is due to begin really any day now. That'll be completed here this year. US 16 Neck York Road intersection lighting project was recently completed here this summer. It's also a planned high friction surface treatment to US 16 to the southwest of Neck York Road area. That's along that horizontal curve and the steep grade coming down, heading northbound to the Neck York Road area. And then there's also a US 16 intersection turn lane project that has it's a variety of turn lanes at various intersections. A lot of those are focused north of US 16B, Catron Boulevard. So that's just wrapping up design and looking for construction in 2020 timeframe. So in terms of first projects, at least first major projects coming out of this corridor study, those again are those 2 key focus intersections, US 16, 16B, Catron Boulevard intersection, and the US 16 Neck York Road intersections. Those are currently planned for construction around the fiscal year 2026 timeframe. Is where we're looking at for the first projects coming out of this corridor study. So with that, I'd like to transition here into the second objective of tonight's meeting, and that's the discussion on transportation needs. Again, this is we're looking for your feedback here tonight on helping us determine what we need to be analyzing and addressing as part of this corridor study. The slide up here shows a number of items that have been identified by the study advisory team already to date. And I did highlight the traffic and safety needs, and as I'm sure you guys are well aware, traffic and safety certainly at the forefront of needs for modifications and improvements here in the future. And in terms of traffic, there's several different things to look at. From a traffic growth perspective, there's a lot of developments. Through this area, we're seeing increases in traffic, very significant increases here recently, and projected here in the future with that development. Likewise to the south, you'll see traffic continue to grow down there as well. Along with that traffic growth, you certainly get the safety issues, at the access locations, and those sorts of things. One thing I do want to point out is we will be looking at intersection warrants in terms of we'll be looking at traffic signal warrants at various intersections as well as turn lanes. So one of the things that we'll have come out of the study is essentially a rough or approximate time of when traffic signals can be warranted at some of these intersections here over the next few decades. A lot of that is tied to access. And when I mean access, it's not so much whether we open or close an access, but in terms of what's needed at that access, in terms of traffic control, turn lanes. Do we need to restrict turns? That's something we discussed quite a bit this afternoon. Stakeholder meetings are some of those locations where instead of a full access, maybe we don't allow lefts out from the side street. So those are the types of things we'll be looking at through there. And a couple other items just want to point out: winter weather, also looking at intelligent transportation systems. And essentially what that is, that's the motorist information systems, whether it's pre-trip, where you can look up on your phone or your computer before you leave, or something while en route or while you're driving, in terms of dynamic message signs, potential intersection or advanced warning signs for various reasons. And then also bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And as you guys are aware, that there's limited facilities right out there right now, so that's something that we'll be looking at and what those needs are here moving in the future. So from a traffic perspective, to kind of set the stage where things are at, we collected volumes this year at 39 intersections. DOT supplemented those intersection counts with segment counts throughout the corridors. We have a very, very complete data set here throughout the entire corridor. The volumes you see up here are reflective of daily traffic volumes, reflective of a average weekday during a peak season, in this case, kind of that June, July timeframe. And then we forecast those volumes out to year 2050, essentially estimating what that traffic growth is going to look like from the development, from external traffic, coming from outside the region. And that's where we get the 2050 forecast. So as you can see, certainly with related to the development on the northern half of the corridor, that's where we see the largest magnitude of growth. I doubt that's surprising to a lot of people here, but we also see some growth to the south. And that's, coupled with increased development, certainly not at the density you see up in the northern half, but there is that development down to the southern half, as well as just that continued increase in travel between Rapid City and the Black Hills area. So a couple quick conclusions from the traffic operations analysis, that we, essentially to identify some of the operational needs at spot locations, whether it's intersections or highway segments, we look at AM and PM peak hour operations analyses. And in this case, one of those is US 16B Catron Boulevard intersection. Long-term operations, there's already, from time to time, some operational challenges at that location, just with the traffic demand that's out there right now. But we'd certainly expect that to continue to increase as traffic grows here throughout the area. And a lot of, particularly to the northern half, they're talking about north of Moon Meadows, even down to Neck Yoke, but it's that development-driven traffic growth and changing traffic patterns. It was once US 16, a lot of the travel between Rapid City and the Black Hills, and it's through travel, it's high speed. And now we're starting to see a lot more of that local travel with the development that's going on in the area. And that changes traffic patterns. What was once highly directional traffic one way or the other is now much more of a mix. Instead of commuter traffic to Rapid City and back in the evening, and now it's a mix of both directions. So that should. Oh.
Is there an overpass going to go over top of there?
Well, we'll get to questions after the meeting. So with related to the development and traffic, that there's a number of things that we will be looking at again, and some of those needs are the intersection configuration, that traffic control. What's an access plan look like in terms of long-term? What is the access going to look like here throughout the entire corridor? Also, service road operations. As you guys know, especially here north of the bypass, that there's a service road on the west side, and it's within 85 feet of the US 16 corridor. And what's that going to look like operationally long-term? So that's something we'll be looking at here as well. And then one of those is, that question of what's the intended function of US 16 long-term? Well, right now it's that high-speed, high-capacity roadway, that rural, expressway type facility. Is that, particularly here in the northern part, is that what we want it to be long-term? Or is there going to be that transition to more of an urban cross-section, lower speed, potentially more access locations? So hopefully we'll be able to answer some of those questions as well.
Why can't we talk about the intersection right now?
We'll get right back to it, sir.
We got the slide up, I mean.
So with the US 16 crash history review, we looked at 5 years of crash data, 2014 through 2018. And really throughout here, the entire corridor, 580 total crashes. And 73% of those were segment-related crashes. Essentially, those were the crashes not occurring at intersections. And we had 27% of those 580 crashes occurring at intersections. One of the first things we look at is the seriousness of these crashes. And there are 24 fatal and serious injury crashes throughout the entire corridor. And there are some hot spots certainly on the high severity crashes, but they were dispersed throughout the entire corridor, and that's certainly one of the considerations when we're looking at the crash history review here. Another thing we look at is the type of crash, and that gets into vehicle-animal crashes, angle crashes, rear-end crashes, roadway departure crashes, and one of those things too is 48% of those 508 crashes were vehicle-animal crashes. And that's a pretty high number, and there's some very notable hot spots throughout the area, so that is certainly something that we'll be looking at as part of this corridor study. Another thing we look at is when are the crashes occurring in terms of time of the year, as well as the time of the day. June and November were the highest frequency crash months, and which wasn't completely unexpected. June is that's kind of that first month in the peak tourist season. A lot of unfamiliar drivers in the area, a lot of new drivers in the area. November, especially in these winter weather areas, those are usually the months of the first winter storms, at least the first major winter storms. And those are typically the winter weather events that have the highest crash frequency throughout the winter. And in terms of when these crashes are occurring during the day, 44% of all crashes occurred at night, essentially in dark conditions. And a lot of that, can be cross-referenced vehicle-animal crashes. It also just kind of gives you an idea of, when these crashes are occurring and some of the reasons of why these are occurring as well. One other thing I want to point out here on the figure up there is that there's the crashes by total crashes, segment crashes, and intersection crashes by year. And there was a bit of a spike there in 2017, just in case you were wondering. A lot of that was due to just there was a considerably higher number of vehicle-animal crashes that year than other years, and really that was what contributed primarily to that spike in the area. So from that, looking at the higher level corridor-wide perspective from the crash review, we wanted to look at specific intersections and locations, and identifying those locations that have higher crash rates. And that accounts for looking at not only the crash frequency, but also the amount of traffic either entering the intersection or traveling along the segment. And then we also do a weighted crash rate analysis, and that essentially applies a factor to higher severity crashes. So a couple of things that stood out, and we have some boards that discuss this as well. Locations identified with safety needs. And by all means, this is not an all-inclusive list, just a couple examples. That's US 16, 16B Catron Boulevard intersection, which did have the highest crash rate of any intersection here within the study area. It also, over half of all intersection crashes along the corridor occurred at that intersection over the 5 years. The US 16 Neck Yoke Road intersection was another one that rose to the top. And in difference than US 16, 16B intersection, that the frequency was not high. There were only four crashes over those 5 years at that intersection. However, 3 of those 4 were either fatal or serious injury crashes. And that's one thing that we want to address as part of the study is the serious nature of crashes at that intersection. And a couple other areas that we want to point out, the horizontal curve and steep grade is southwest of Neck Yoke Road. Also, the Straddle Rim Drive to Wilderness Canyon Road area, not only the intersections, but also the segments between those intersections. And then the Rockerville area, which was, again, a little bit different, that there were a large number of crashes throughout the Rockerville area, but nearly 3/4 of those were vehicle-animal related. So again, that really highlights that vehicle-animal conflict within the Rockerville area. So with that, before we break out here in tonight's open house, wanted to touch on We have draft purpose and need statements for the environmental process here. And since these intersections, again, are at a different phase in their project development here within the study, that what we're really looking for here is we have a bit more of a refined purpose statement for the project, as well as supporting needs. So if there's anything that comes to mind that we're missing, make sure to let us know through your comment cards here tonight. And at the US 16B Catron Boulevard intersection, the purpose to improve traffic operations and safety and support the planned mixed-use urban development that is occurring in the area. And that is supported by three primary needs. Well, again, the poor traffic operations, not only some of the challenges that we see out there right now, but also that continued degradation of those operations in the future. High crash rates. Again, this intersection had the highest crash rate of any intersection within the study area. Also represented over half of all intersection crashes along the 16.5 miles of US 16. Then the other one again is that rapidly urbanizing land use and just accommodating that future traffic, not only at that intersection, but really, facilitating traffic flow, throughout the entire area. And for US 16 Neck Yoke Road intersection, purpose statement to improve safety and access management in the area of Neck Yoke Road. That's supported again by three primary needs. First one, that high weighted crash rate, and that's where it's a severe injury crashes there. Multiple access points, and that kind of brings in a couple things too. That with multiple access points, the turn lanes, the short turn lanes, some access points without turn lanes. And it's just really addressing all those issues together. And then the narrow median separation, and that is again kind of wrapped into several things. In terms of what is that intersection going to look like in the future? What are we designing towards? Is that going to be more of an urban type intersection? How much are we consolidating access? How much are we restricting turns at other access? Essentially, what does that future intersection look like? And that's what one of those needs is to further study and improve that intersection. So with that, next steps. Again, after tonight's meeting, we'll compile everyone's feedback. We'll complete our preliminary analysis, and that allows us to transition into phase 2. And from the overall US 16 corridor perspective, we'll begin to develop concepts at that high level, kind of a brainstorming level. We'll go through some preliminary evaluation. And then for the US 16B Catron Boulevard intersection, US 16 Neck Yoke Road intersection, we'll be refining build alternatives. We'll be doing that more detailed analysis with our updated traffic volumes. We'll go through refining the alternatives that have been developed to date. So when we come back, next meeting, that fall, winter, November, December 2019 timeframe, that will be presenting the refined build options at the intersections. It will be presenting the concepts really throughout the entire corridor. So with that, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Hopefully this was informative. Again, we have lots of people from the study advisory team here to answer your questions, provide additional information as needed. In terms of comments, we appreciate any comments that you guys back, at least for this first public meeting. If we could get those by August 6th, that allows us a timely transition into phase 2. And again, US16corridor.com, and we'll look for you all to see you all again here in November, December 2019. So with that, we'll just break out into the open house, and again, really, thank you everyone for your time.